Thanks for tuning in at Brackies.
Hello everyone and welcome to video number 9 on making a multiplayer FPS in Unity. In today's video we're going to take a look at adding some cool graphics to our game. Most particularly we're going to be adding a player model, so that's going to be really awesome. Before we get started, I just want to talk about what's going on with this. So if you haven't seen my latest 2D platformer video, you don't know that I've changed this video format. So I hope you like it as it is now. And also I've made a survey where people could answer some questions about how they would like the Brackies video format to be in the future. And I'm going to make a forum post about that, which will be in the description, where you can see some of the results on what people have voted for. But definitely most people voted that I should keep the face cam, so that's what you're going to be seeing in this video. So I hope you can bear with me if it's not something of your liking, but the people have spoken, sort of say. So I'll really try and have it so that the face cam is not too distracting or doesn't cover anything up. So with that said, let's go into today's video. Alright, so you can see I have this player model folder and I haven't really decided where I want to upload this yet, but a link to download it will definitely be in the description. And this is an awesome robot model made by Sameen Ibne, and a link to him is also in the description. He does client work and he's just great to work with. I've done so multiple times, and he has great prices and is really experienced, so definitely check him out. But anyway, so we can just import this entire folder. You can see it has an FBX file, that's a model file, and that can be basically opened in pretty much any 3D modeling application if you want to change something. We then have the textures for the parts of the robot and for the body, which is just a sphere here. So you can see we have the different textures in there and the model file itself. So what we want to do is simply take this player model folder and drag into Unity just like that. And Unity will start importing all of the different assets. This might take a little while depending on your computer speed. I'm recording here, so okay, it actually wasn't too bad. And then it's going to give you a warning here that says it can't calculate tangents. This can just be ignored. That's because we have an empty object within the model hierarchy, which we're simply going to delete. So it doesn't matter that that's giving us a warning there. So you can see we have the player model here, and I just want to start by dragging this into the scene, and you can see it there. And of course make sure the transform is reset. And you can see it's way too large. So let's go into the player model import settings and scale this down to 0.1 and then hit apply. And also now that it has imported the materials, we can go ahead and uncheck that. And then we can see we have some tangents here. We want to calculate those and import the normal, so that's perfect. I hit apply on that. We can go under the rig, make sure it's set to none, and animations, and just disable that because there are no animations with this model. We're going to create them on our own. So you can see now we have the body and parts. Those are just textures, and then we have the materials folder, and it's automatically created 2 different materials for us. And that's not quite how we want it set up, because if we just move this guy up a bit, and our shadow quality is currently awful, you can change that under the project settings quality. I'm just going to keep it because I'm recording whilst doing this, so we can bump it up later. So again, we can select these different materials, and if we just take the body one and color this black, you can see that it isn't applied because we lost that connection when we told it not to import the materials. So we can go ahead and apply this to the sphere there, and then the insides here, let's just rename this to parts. I'm just using these materials. You can go ahead and create them. It's basically the same thing. Let's just make this red. And we're going to add that to this and to the thrusters. Those are the parts. And then we can create a third one, material, and this is going to be the eye light. And we can just make this blue and drag it on to there. Good. Just so we can know what is what here. Then we can expand the player model hierarchy and delete the first object here. That one is empty, but the rest we are going to need. So this is going to be our armor or parts or whatever armor. This is going to be our thrusters. This is going to be our body and our eye light. So all of these naming and how you choose to do materials is completely up to you. You can take this model and do whatever you want with it. But Sameen has provided some really awesome materials, so let's set those up. So let's start with the body here, change that to a complete white, because we're going to be using a texture to define the albedo channel. And that's the body color version here. So simply click that, and that looks all right, but the magic happens when we go ahead and choose a texture for the metallic setting also, because you can drag this around and all that, but if we have it defined by a texture, things start looking really awesome. So simply select the body metal here, and you can see what kind of cool shiny look that gives us. Then we select a normal map, that's the body normal, and you can see that it's not marked as a normal map. We can simply click fix now, or you can go ahead and find it and choose normal. And then we want a height map, and that's going to be our body height. And yeah, that setting's going to be just fine. So you can see that is a very nice shiny material that we have there, of this kind of well-used robot. I mean, it's not exactly factory new, so it's well worn. Good. And then we can have some textures for the parts here. So again, let's change this to white. Go into the albedo and select parts color. Then undo metallic and select parts metal. And undo the normal map and select parts normal, and again fix now. And you can see that that gives us this awesome looking texture. It's hand painted. Cool. So I'm actually really satisfied with that. However, I want to change this light just a bit. Instead of changing the albedo, I want that to be some kind of gray, and then do an emission instead. And we're just going to make this a light blue. Something like that. And you can play around with these settings to make it look even better. But I think that gives a really nice impression that this is kind of glowing from the robot. We're also going to add some thruster particles at some point, but I don't know if we'll be doing that in this tutorial. We have a lot of stuff to cover. So now that we have this set up, and you can say it just throws us that warning again, we can just clear that. Now that we have this set up, we can go ahead and add this to our player object. So let's drag our player into the scene. Let's drag our, you can see under graphics here, we have a player model. Let's just drag our new player model under there. Delete the old one, continue. We are going to lose our prefab connection, and then reset the transform on this one. And then we can simply hit apply again here to bring back the prefab fab connection here. And you can see that the thrusters are made in such a way that we can actually tilt them in order to simulate the player moving because of force applied from the thrusters. So that's kind of the animation that we're going to have. So when he's idle, we're going to have the thrusters pointing downwards. When he's moving forward, we're going to have them pointing backwards. And when he's moving backwards, we're going to have them pointing forwards. So that's going to look really awesome. But you will also see that he's currently rotated by 180 degrees. So we're going to flip him over. So let's just take the entire player model here. And we could just scale him on a -1 on the Z here. Or we could rotate him. I mean, this is simply a matter of preference. I'm just going to do a 180 on the Y. And that's going to work just fine. I don't think it's going to have any influence on, well, anything. Great. So that already looks really awesome. And if we apply these changes and delete the player, we can already take him for a spin. And these changes will be applied to the actual game or to the network. So he will spawn with a cool player model. You can see some issues appear, however. You can see that when we spawn, we are actually able to see our own player model. And that might be fine for some things, but if we have this huge piece of armor blocking our screen, that's not really something that we want to see. So we're definitely going to have to set up some kind of system for disabling that. I mean, if we go under our player here, drag it in here, and go under the components to disable. Well, there's nothing really telling this that the components that we want to disable should be on this object. It could be components on other objects, and therefore we might just go around and disable renderers on other objects. So we can simply add some to this, and that's maybe something that we want to do for now. So let's just change that so we have room for one more. And then let's log this, and then add a tab, inspector, add another inspector, have this over here. That one is logged, this one is not. Then we find our armor and take the mesh renderer on that and drag it. No, that can actually not be disabled here. So it seems that the mesh renderer is not actually a behavior. Okay, it's definitely a component, but it's not a behavior. So that's fine, and that's definitely something that we can take care of. I mean, we can add another list here. We can add a custom mesh renderer. We could have a list that disabled objects, or we could add a mask to the camera. We have so many options for getting this to work. However, what I want to do now is simply ignore it. So let's just see when we'll have time for that. It's an easy fix when we get to it, but right now I have some other stuff that I want to focus on. So let's just close that tab there, and we'll come back to it a bit later. So what I wanted to have a look at now is synchronizing, is animating these thrusters, and then syncing that over the network. And Unity has some awesome ways of syncing animations. They have what is called a network, if we go under here, a network animator, which requires a normal animator as a variable slot. And then you are able to choose what properties you want to sync over the network. However, that doesn't smooth anything out. So if you want smooth rotation, which is something that we want, or smooth blending, that doesn't really work. So what we're going to do is we're going to rotate these locally and then add a network transform child to sync their rotation over the network, because that will actually apply smoothing. So it's maybe not the best way, but it's definitely going to work just fine. So let's do that. Let's start by adding some animation. So let's find our animation window. It's under Window, Animation, or press Ctrl 6. And in here, if we select our player, we're able to create a new animator and animation clip. So let's hit create, go under our player model, make a new folder called animation, go under that folder, and in here we are going to, let's make the idle animation first. And we can simply make sure that this is red and those are red. And then we can go under graphics, player model, thrusters, simply select those again. Make sure to click this, and now we are recording, so that means that we can actually change our rotation here. So these are actually a bit offset. I don't know if I want to start with those offsets. So let's just disable the animation there and try and reset this. No, because we want them to be scaled. Let's just zero that out, zero that and that out. No, that doesn't look good. Okay, so we'll just keep all of these settings and then only change this. That's fine. So let's hit record again. And when we're not moving, well, we want to change those so they are pointing downwards. And the anchor here is not perfect. So let's just do about -40. That should make them point downwards. Yeah, just by measurement of the eye. And just to make sure that this is working, let's copy these keyframes, move over 1 second, and paste them again. So we're just going to have this animation state here. It's not going to do any animation on the timeline. We're instead going to be blending using the speed of our object. But you'll see that in a sec. So let's now create a new clip. Let's call this one Move Forward. And again, select the thrusters, make sure we're recording, find the rotation parameter, and I believe we're simply going to set this to -90. That looks right. And let's copy those over to 1 second. Great. Let's create the last clip here, and this is going to be Move backward. And again, select the thruster, record, and let's simply select 0 here, copy that, go 1 second, stop recording, and that was it. That was all we needed to do to make our animations, and we can just close those off now. Let's go under the project, go under the player model animation, and find our animation controller here called player. I'm just going to call this player controller, or player anim controller. There we go. Let's double click that to open it up in the animator, and let's just make some room for the animator here. And you can see that we have 3 animation states. We have an idle, a move forward, and a move backward, and they each have their associated animation. So idle, move forward, and move backward. But we should just go ahead and delete these, because we don't want to transition between them by using some kind of Boolean state, or whether or not we are passing some kind of requirement and then we transition. No, we want to transition fluently. So we want Mechanim, the Unity animation system, to blend between them. And therefore we create what is called a blend tree. So right click, create state from new blend tree. And we can go ahead and rename this to move, because it's basically all of our movement in one state. And if we then double click on this, we open up the move blend tree. And you can see this has a blend parameter. And currently that goes between 0 and 1. And that is kind of, that is the value that will blend between the animations. So that's going to represent our forward speed. So we can go ahead and rename this to forward. And I was going to say speed here, but since it can both be negative and positive for forward and backwards movement, I'm going to say forward velocity. But currently this goes from 0 to 1. And I'm going to show you how to change that. So over here in the right hand side, we want to add our 3 motions, our 3 animation clips. So let's create add motion field, add motion field, add motion field. In the middle, we're going to put our idle. At the beginning, we are going to put our forward, and down here, we're going to put our backward. Then we uncheck automate thresholds, and then we say, okay, when we're moving forward, we want this to be a 1. When we are standing still, we want our speed to be 0. And when we are moving backwards, we want our speed to be -1. So we have this value clamped between -1 and 1, and the animation will blend using this value. So if we now select our player and select our blend tree, we can actually preview this down here. It's currently set to 0. Okay, so this is a place where my face cam is probably blocking everything. So let me just move this up a bit here. I promised I wouldn't let it block anything. So here you can see it just at a forward velocity of 0. If we then move this up, you can see that the thrusters go backwards. And if we move it down, we can see that they turn forward here. So that's perfect. So we can easily blend between this in a very nice and fluent way. So I'm going to move this back down because we're not going to be needing it anymore. There we go. And we can basically start applying the forward velocity using a script. So we can just drag this back here. There we go. Then we can select our player, make sure that we have our player anim controller here, and that everything is looking great, which it is. Then we can go in and find a script where we can change this. So I suggest we do that inside of the player controller, because this is where we calculate our velocity, where our speed variable is, which we are going to be needing in order to make sure that it's clamped between -1 and 1 and all that stuff. So in here, let's add a new serialized field private animator, which we're just going to call animator. And then in the start method here, actually, let's not make this a serialized field. Let's require this. So let's require component of type animator. Let's move this down here where we cache our components. So this is component caching. And then here we simply add it. So animator equals get component animator. There we go. And we're sure it's there because, again, animator, not animation, because we required up there. So for some reason the recording cut out here and it's lacking some audio, but I'll just quickly tell you what we did. First off, we removed the .normalized, but we kept the parentheses. You see me adding them back in there. Then we changed the two input lines from get access raw to simply get access. That makes the input much more smooth. We could smooth it ourselves, but Unity does a great job actually. Next up, you can see me making a comment here because we are now animating our movement. We do this by calling setFloat on our animator. The float we want to change is forward velocity and we want to set it to the set movement. And just clear out some warnings here. Those are just from the new update and they're definitely not important, so we won't be looking at those right now. And this should now be working locally. So let's try and remove that after having applied the changes. Play the game, go into LAN host, and we can maybe zoom out here so we can see what's going on. LAN host. Yay, it's working. So you can see how this is smooth. The movement is now much smoother. And I think it's a nice amount of smooth. It's not overdone. And you can see how the thrusters down here change as we move. Cool. So that actually looks very nice, and I think it helps give the impression that this robot is actually moving for a reason, not just adding forces out of thin air. Next up is syncing this over the network. And that might sound really difficult, and I definitely had some trouble figuring out the best way to do this, but once you know how, it's really easy. So let's just search for transform, and then add the network transform child component. We've already added one of those up here, and we're going to add one with basically the same settings. Except this time, if we drag the player into the hierarchy, we're going to go under the graphics player model, and instead of having the camera transform, we're going to have our thrusters as the target. The movement threshold is going to be the same here. Again, interpolate movement is going to be 0. This is fine at 0.3. And we only want to sync our X. So it's all of the same values as up here, but remember to change the target. Then we're going to apply this, and we can again remove this from the scene. And I think we are ready to build this actually. So, whoops, some kind of null reference. That's caused by Unity, I think. Don't think we need to worry about that. So let's just make sure. Yeah, we have a target here and our animator looks fine. I can't see any issues with this, so let's try and build this. Control B or Command B, and see if it's working. So this is taking an odd amount of time here. Okay, great. And hit play in here. Actually, I'm just gonna wait for it to calculate the lighting here. There we go. And you can see here that this is working. So let's make this the host and make this the client. And watch this guy now as we start to move. No. Okay, so this is not working. And I know why. Do you know why? Think about this. Okay, so if we take a look at our player here. Actually, I should have waited and taken a look at the other guy. So in here, we have an animator. We have a player mode and a player controller. The animator uses the animation controller to every frame check for different values and then transition the animation depending on those values. And those values are the properties or the parameters up here. And this starts at a value of 0. So we have a starting forward velocity of 0. Unless it's changed by the player motor or the player controller. However, under our player setup, we have this array of components to disable. we disable the player motor and all of a bunch of stuff. We also disable the player controller. So that means that for all clients which are not the local client, or for all players which is not the local player, the player controller is going to be disabled, and therefore the animator is never going to experience a property of forward velocity other than 0. So it's always going to have a forward velocity of 0. There's nothing there to change it. And that will overwrite whatever information we sync using our network transform child. So if we stop this now and find our player, we can actually simply expand our player setup, go into components to disable, add room for one more, and drag in our animator. And I think that will do it. So I think that will basically be it. So now we can build this one more time. Oops, hit the wrong key there. Let's build this one more time. And hopefully this time it's gonna work. So let's have that there. And this is why debugging over the network is so difficult, because you can have stuff overriding each other without giving any errors. And it can be such a pain to debug. So again, let's observe here. Let's drag this over here. Client, again, look over here. Yes, so now it's working. That was indeed the error, and it actually looks very, very smooth, especially with these physics here we have going on. It really looks like he's floating on some thrusters. So I think that's just perfect. And you will notice that if we give it a bit too much force here and drop down, you can see the thrusters simply clip through the ground, but I don't think that's an issue right now. I think we have other stuff to look at. So that looks really, really cool. What the heck? Let's add some particles. So now if we drag our player in here, we can add some player thruster particles down here. So in order to do this, let's right click, go import package, particle systems, because if I remember correctly, Unity has some really cool default thruster particles. We're not going to be spending too much time on this, that would be kind of silly, but I definitely think that we should add some of them. Did I not hit particles here? We have all kinds of control stuff. Don't want any of that. None. Okay, so let's select none here and just find the ones that we want. So the standard assets, no input, all of the particle systems, all of the prefabs. Don't think we're going to be needing any of the scripts. Let's just keep them. Shaders, textures, none of the utility, none of this other stuff. Okay, so that's all we're going to be using here. So let's import that. This might take a little while. Okay, that was actually quite speedy. Again, let's go under the console and just clear out those warnings. And now we can go under standard assets, particle systems. And you can see we have some different stuff in here. Let's find a cool prefab. So let's find the afterburner one. This was exactly the one that I wanted to find. So you can see this is quite a huge particle system, but I think it looks really, really cool, and it gives this subtle but awesome looking effect of an afterburner. So let's definitely keep this, but just change it a bit. So we definitely want this to be smaller in any kind of way possible. So we have this glow here. Is that just, that's another particle system, and the afterburner itself. So the glow, okay, it's just that centered glow effect there. Let's just take this one at a time. So let's start by looking at the afterburner. And this is currently really long. So let's start by changing the lifetime on this to something like 0.1, and maybe bump down the start speed a bit too. So let's set this to 20. I think that looks a lot better. And definitely we want the size of these to be much smaller too. So let's try 0.2 to 0.4. That is better, but we definitely want the speed to be lower. 10. looks pretty decent. But we might want to spawn more or set this lifetime a bit longer, because currently we can see between these. So the rate here is 80. That's already a pretty high spawn rate, but we can set it to 120. That's not gonna matter. And this is starting to look like something that we can add to the thrusters here. So let's just take this now, go into player, graphics, player model, thrusters, and let's add the afterburners here. So let's go into thruster, let's reset the transform on this. Let's drag this out, down here, try and position these as accurately as possible. Yeah, that's not far off, so let's drag it down a bit, something like that. And we also need to rotate this to point the right way. Almost correct. Oops. Something like that. Looks like a great starting point. Awesome. It's not totally even. We can do better. That looks pretty great. Awesome. So you can see here it's still a pretty long effect. So I think we can actually just make the speed lower again. So let's change this to 5. Yeah, that looks much better. And we can even move it a bit up in the tube. That's fine. And then we need to rotate it a bit inwards. Actually, we can do a bit more. Something like that. That's maybe a bit too much. Yeah, that looks really great. And move it over a bit. Awesome. And you can fill around with this as much as you want. I'm just going to keep it like this for now. And then we can add the glow back in. And this is going to be probably a bit too big now. You can see just how large that is. It goes all the way through the ground. So let's just change the speed of this to 4. That's gonna limit it. Whoops. I don't know why it's zoomed out so far. There we go. See just how large these particles are. So the start size here is going to be something like 0.5 to 0.6. Looks better. And the lifetime 0.3, smaller, 0.1, 0.2 to 0.4, 3, 2. That's better. I actually really like the look of that. For some reason, it goes out really far when I try to focus on it. So let's try and simulate that. That looks awesome. Okay, so I'm really happy with that effect. And I think we can just go ahead and add this to the other side as well. So this is going to be afterburner 1. We can duplicate this and do afterburner 2. Actually, let's make this left and right. So this is going to be afterburner underscore left. And this is going to be afterburner underscore right. And we're going to look from the direction of the player here. So we're going to inverse the x-axis. Like that. And then we are going to, we can maybe just scale it on the x as well. Let's do a negative here. No, that doesn't work. So we have to inverse the rotation here as well. So that's the up and down. That's going to be fine. So the y here should be shifted a bit. And I think that looks pretty great. Yeah. So let's go ahead and see how that looks in the game. So close that, that, and that. Let's hit apply. Remove the player. Save. And let's hit play. LAN host. Whoops. Okay, so we are definitely flying. Something is happening here. Maybe I forgot to remove some script of some sorts on these. So the thrusters are here, the afterburner. Yeah, there we go. They have a physics force and a collider. We want none of that. So let's delete them both. The physics force and the collider. They were adding some kind of force. We don't want that to happen. So let's hit apply to that again. Save that, go and hit play. LAN host. It says the reference script on this game behavior is missing. So again, there's something. So let's just move out here. Find our player, graphics player model, thrusters. Select both glow objects and let's remove that. Not that it matters, but it's nice to just remove a unnecessary warning. That always feels good. So let's apply that, delete the player, and let's try this one last time. So let's hit play, LAN host, and now you can see the thrusters are looking great. So we can of course get those to vary depending on what we're doing. For now I just want them to be a constant thing, give the impression that something is holding us up. We can definitely also do some hover bouncing or something, but we'll see with all of that. So that was basically all I could come up with for this tutorial. Next time we'll probably take care of the stuff that is currently blocking our screen, maybe do something about the environment too, I don't know. So we'll have a see in the next video, but thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.